Welcome back, everyone, to this special edition of Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we use the cards and runes to lower the veils a bit and take a sneak peek about what are the most likely energy issues coming up in the world of current events and things that are likely to affect your future. As always, the legal disclaimer first. These readings on the show are for entertainment purposes only. But like any form of entertainment, they can be used to help inform and educate you about possible life options. Before making any sort of serious life-changing decision, it's always better to check with a certified expert in the field that you are seeking to know about before making any such decision. But meanwhile, you can look at these readings as a sort of foggy mirror that may help you decide where to start looking. That said, we have a very special show for you today. Instead of our usual format of simply looking ahead a week or two, we're going to open those cat's eyes a bit wider and try to take a longer look down the path. We're going to look at the major energies and issues most likely to be knocking on our collective doors over the next 6 months instead of the next 6 days. Doing this is a bit chancy because, as I've mentioned before, the further out you get in time, or the longer the time period you choose to read for is, the more likely it is that situations and energies are going to change a little bit. Especially any reading where human beings and human decisions are involved, because I believe we're not all pawns to fate, but we're allowed to make free will and make choices. And because we can change things, sometimes things will go off in a totally unexpected direction. Still, in general, we can usually get a good sense of some of the overall issues most likely to be floating to the top of the energy pool over the next few months, as long as we are careful in how we ask the questions, and we're ready to repeat the reading further down the line if the information really seems to be changing. Of course, having already done this reading today, it will be much easier to check up in 3-4 months from now to see if we really seem to be on that timeline, or if perhaps things have sort of shifted in another direction. Since we're going to be doing the show anyway, this will be pretty easy to do in terms of comparing back and forth. I'm recording this show around June 18th, 2013, as I will still be speaking and traveling in the UK on Monday, July 1st, 2013, when this show goes to air. In the future, I hope to do more of these not-so-time-specific readings, ones that either look further ahead in time or look at specific current event topics on their own and read cards just about them, rather than specifically for the week ahead. I'll be doing this because sometimes I may not actually be able to be here when the show is broadcast, like tonight. But if you have any topics that you would like to see covered in these special show broadcasts that I'll be doing ahead, please send them to me at melodyreader@gmail.com. That's Melody with an I, reader@gmail.com, and put show topic in the subject line. And I'll be delighted to see what you have to suggest, because it's better to work with more than one mind when doing this kind of thing. I know that my audience has got to be very creative and can probably go places I would never even think of. All that said, let's go now and take a look at what the cards have to say about the coming second half of this year, shall we? Well, let me look at my question first. And the way I chose to word the question this time was, what are the most important energies and or issues the cards and runes want to call to our attention for the time period July 2013 through December 2013, basically the next 6 months. Now, why did I phrase it that way? I phrased it that way because I wanted to flag issues as well as energies. Most of the time in the weekly readings, we're just looking at energies which make things likely to happen. But I wanted specifically to see if the cards would look at what might actually be coming in terms of concrete things. Sometimes they'll tell us, sometimes they don't, but let's see what they did. Well, what we have here are 6 cards, more or less 1 card for each of the upcoming months. And although I didn't specifically ask the cards to line up by month, some aspects of the readings may apply to the entire period of time. But most of the time in this sort of reading, the first cards are closer in time than the later cards. In my experience, neither the cards, nor especially the runes, tend to pay that much attention to human dates anyway. They will give you a general sense of timing, but tend to flow around here and there through the reading, and often a bit before or a bit after the specified time period. So let's see what they actually came up with, though, realizing that the first card is kind of probably July, and the last card is probably kind of the period of December, but in general we may be looking at things kind of a little less clear than that. Okay, the first card that comes is birth. And birth may signify the time period just around the corner, coming as it does in July. Now, this is a great card to start out with. In fact, I can think of a few better cards to start out a reading for the time period, because again, it suggests something is being born. Something is coming into being. It's coming forth. Something new and unformed, probably innocent, and certainly a new beginning. So we can expect some changes, or at least some new individual, or more likely new situation being born during the next part of this summer. And since that's where we're starting the reading, that's why it's so really, really nice to see the birth card, because it's the birth of the time period we're reading, and the birth of summer, and the birth of our situation. Now, the situation coming up involves a union. It could be a union of people, of tribes, a country, an organization, particularly organizations with union or united in their name or their former names, things like Union Carbide or the United States of America. You get the drift of this, but it just means a union of something. It could even be a relationship between people. That's because the union card, it does come next after birth, and the union card is officially the lover's card in this deck, which plays into the relationship meme. That on the surface, the card is the perfect relationship of two lovely streams coming together to form one big river. However, like any card, it has multiple strains and levels of meaning. And in this case, it could suggest any sort of union, as I said before, or the coming together of individuals, peoples, tribes, groups, or nations, at least for a perceived common purpose or a contract. And this purpose could be something really wonderful, it could be something believed to be wonderful, or it could be something not so great. We just don't know, because the card itself does not say, although generally this card does tend to flow on the good side rather than the bad side most of the time. Now, on the current event scale, I would look about everything I've discussed as possibilities, but concentrate on what appear to be new unions, new alliances, new corporations, or at least something new in the sense that it seems to be something new about the way it's coming together. For example, countries that had not been friends suddenly making a treaty, or two organizations that you would never expect suddenly morphing into a third one that is neither like the parents, that kind of thing. Or it could at least be something that comes out of an existing union that is now born, as I just was talking about. What exactly this union is, we are not sure. It could be anything from the obvious, like the birth of a union between two non-aligned countries, leaders, or corporations, to something more cryptic that doesn't make sense at first and has to be puzzled out. No matter what, a big and perhaps long-delayed decision will have to be made about this, especially about this union, and perhaps the consequences of it. Because the puzzle card, that decision that cannot be avoided, is right in the middle of the reading. Time-wise, if these cards are sorted by the month, we are looking at fall in the Northlands, spring if you live down under, i.e. around September, when this decision puzzle card really comes to a head. So you've got kind of a time image there. I'm not saying the EU or any other particular union is going to fall apart or morph into something previously unknown or give birth even to a new entity at this time. But if it were going to do so, September is about the time you'd expect these decisions and changes to take place, or at least they could no longer be avoided. So, for example, if the EU were the focus of this, or the United States were the focus of this, the decisions and changes that would have to be made would be forced onto the scene because you just couldn't avoid them any longer, whatever the union in question is. The same would be true of any union energy that is seriously affecting everyone, from personal relationships to other power blocks, alliances, or even corporate empires, such as that Union Carbide, or if they're even around anymore, I'm not sure. But again, corporations and public mergers. My hunch, though, is by the way I phrase the question about issues as well as energies, that at least one really large birth, union, puzzle situation is going to stand out above everything else. It's more likely an international block of powers, or about unions, friendships, relationships between countries, again, some of whom may have union or united in their name, because it feels like something really big. If it's not about actual treaties and countries, it's probably about something really recognizable. Now, there could even be a major issue with actual unions or the labor employment movement. It's something that gives birth to a new direction in economics, or an attempt to change on how things are going forward, perhaps an attempt to bring about jobs or something in that direction, and that also would fit this energy pretty well. But whatever it is, again, remember the dates late August, September, early October as the time period to be looking at this time when it's going to be needed to change. Something will come to a head and something will have to be done. Since we're doing a real reading for all of the latter part of 2013, my guess is this will be when it will be big enough to notice whatever it is and flag it. We won't be able to ignore it anymore. When we do another update reading by December, if not before, we can review and go back and see if this sort of puzzle decision point does happen. But we should all mark our mental calendars now for that time period, because while something seems to be coming to birth now and coming together right now, the real crunch time will be several months in the future. Then, boom. Once that decision is made, the energy totally changes with the Fool card. The Fool card is usually not someone who is foolish, although sometimes it is, more on that later, but more often it just means a totally new situation starts. A new journey begins. Something totally different is now starting, and or we are like, woo, off on a totally new direction. I'm getting hints of both the heady wonder of the new journey, the innocent young man going forward on the fool's journey into the unknown that we see on the card. Sometimes he's so excited and distracted that he walks into a tree instead of the road, but basically it's a good outlook. But also hints of perhaps a foolish decision, or the taking off in a new direction after making a decision without quite enough information to base that decision on. What happens next runs right back into the moon card. Hidden information, hidden secrets, most of all in this case, the unknown washes right up on the beach with the tide, rushes over the fool, and probably washes out the road in front of him. But at this point, when we have the fool starting out on what looks like a bright, sunny, and new path around October, yet in the dark, wintry days of November, we see the moon's shadow pulling the tidal forces up and around the fool, and revealing all sorts of surprises, many of which appear to be unfortunate for this new beginning. Some of what the moon drags up is likely to be information that is damaging, and some may also be practical, real-world issues. That the moon can be tidal, causing earthquakes, volcanoes, earth tides, related things, even actual objects from space or the moon itself. We just don't know, because anything is possible at this point because we're reading so far out. But whatever it is, it takes the form of bringing about an unexpected and unwanted energy for that new path, journey, new puzzle, solution, and that comes in the form of the other card, that of destruction. The destruction card means just about what it says on the tin. Now, I don't mean for a moment that things come to Yuletide this year and we're just all gonna die. That didn't work last year. And at that time, it had a few decades of concentrated energy of people worrying about it, and it still didn't happen last year. And I don't really think the we're all gonna die is likely to happen this year either. What I do think, though, is December 2013 could be one of those pivotal points that see the destruction energy expressed in a number of ways, especially in the elimination, damage, or existence from what seems to have been an attempt to bring about that new, foolish decision. A decision that probably looked like a really good idea at the time and may actually have been an attempt to try to improve things, but because of that hidden information, hidden situation, hidden whatever, unknown, actually was not such a good idea. Almost as soon as that, whatever that pathway is, blossoms out, the union is born, the new journey seems to be crushed by this lunar power, which means either hidden aspects revealed, like secrets, or perhaps the enterprise itself is built on illusion or madness to begin with. We actually get our old terms for mental illness like lunacy and moonstruck from memories of this lunar power to confuse, as well as the power to illuminate, to shine perhaps a little more silver than the sun, but sometimes in that dim glow you can see better in the shadows, and that's kind of what the moon does here. Not enough lunar energy in a person's life, and they can become boring, stuck, unimaginative, mundane, or rigid. We all know people like that. We probably work with people like that. They're not bad people, but they're really not all that interesting. They don't really seem to really think out of the box or have imagination. They just do what they need to do, and that's their life. But too much lunar energy, and you can have a person who's so full of dreams and illusions and ideas that they can no longer function in the real world. They actually come to prefer what they see in fantasy, to the point that reality just kind of loses hold on them, and they quite simply go crazy. And I don't mean that in a funny or a ha-ha way. I mean seriously, when people go beyond just being creative and artistic and actually get lost, that's the really dark side of lunar energy. Now my hope is, at this point, again, the cards are just flagging one very specific situation, and that things are mostly limited to that situation. Although, of course, always you're likely to have some bleed over of these major energies that will affect everyone and everything just a little bit. So everyone's going to have a little bit of that, starting off in one direction and maybe finding out that it wasn't such a good idea and coming back and rearranging their lives. But hopefully it won't be nearly as serious as this seems to be on a more larger scale. As I said, I don't expect a destroyed world to come this midwinter. But a lot of destruction and chaos, some of it from natural forces, especially weather, water, tides, and again, maybe those earthquakes, it just isn't impossible with the moon card and the destruction card together. I'm suggesting waterborne or hidden secrets, hidden information, issues being the cause of the destruction, both because of that moon card, which is right before the destruction card, but also the Lagouge, lake, water, and hidden depths rune that comes just after. Lagouge, the rune stave, and the Elder Futhark is very similar to the moon card in my deck. Both involve things hidden, deep in the water, and things that may be getting to rise up from the water. Both involve hidden information, secrets, situations, and both concentrate and concern the world of magic, dreams, creativity, and yes again, illusion and madness. So we pretty much get a double reading here of moon, hidden, illusion, deep waters, then destruction, followed by lake, hidden, illusion, deep waters. A very powerful double message here. Although since there were only 2 runes, The hint is that Lagouche is here already, or maybe here already, and you can see that in the water in both the birth cards. Before any mammal gives birth, the waters break first. If you've ever watched a mama dog or a mama cat give birth, or a human being, you know that first the waters come forth, and then it's in a normal birth, it's followed by the child or the puppies or the kittens. And you get the union card. The waters come together. The actual card has the water pictured on it. It's flowing water coming into streams, so it's water that's moving rather than water that's deep like the lake, but it's still very, very powerful water card. With what they form together exactly is what that puzzle is all about. And since I don't believe we are all the victims of fate here and we don't have any choices, it may very well be that no one, not even the cards or the universe itself, knows exactly what that puzzle choice will be. Except they do know the most likely outcome of this puzzle decision is for that pathway to look really good at first, really positive, like it's the way forward, the solution, but it soon meets its doom on the rocky shores of moon-inspired issues. Finally, we have the rune Nauthiz, need fire or desperation. This again comes as the second rune, and I'm leaning towards its power intensifying towards the timing of the moon destruction cards around the end of 2013, and not being as strong right now in the beginning of the time period. While this rune stave has been showing up a lot lately, even though there is some desperate need already in the world, I mean, there always is desperate need someplace or another, but it has been showing up more than usual. There does seem to be a time period of really, really great need, desperation, and seeking of help somewhere towards the end of the year. Now, if I'm correct in this, we'll expect to see the Nauthiz energy showing up on certain days, but somewhat fading back a bit from its present strong position, but then really coming back towards the end of that time period. We'll just have to watch and see. Now, also the need fire, the Nauthiz rune, is made of one of the oldest forms of fire, the sort you make by rubbing two sticks together to produce a spark. Because atoms are also sparks, there does have to be a mention that part of the hidden lunar issues could be nuclear. Either an accident, Japan comes to mind, more information about that, or heaven forbid another accident, or perhaps the use of even nuclear weapons. Or it could simply be the final igniting of a smoldering spark that the water just couldn't cover over fast enough, either a physical one or a metaphorical one, we don't know yet. But need fire is not something people do when they have any other choice either. Really quickly, people figure out flint and steel, that it's much easier to use, and traditional people figure out how to use this primitive form of the modern match pretty quickly. My husband can light a fire real fast with a flint and steel set that's based on one from the 5th century, and they were probably using these back in the early Stone Age. So pretty quickly people figured out that making need fire was not what you want to do unless you just really have to. The suggestion of going back to a turned stick for making fire then also has hints of possible issues with the power grid, even temporarily being out from like water, snow, ice storms, or other weather. And desperate situations like that, where the need for fire is great enough that people are desperate enough to do anything to stay warm or take care of themselves. Now, we've only forecasted out for about 6 months, and it was never my intention to leave everyone out there with a cliffhanger as to what's going to come next. But the cards and runes have chosen to do so anyway. Remember, the further out we tend to read, the less certain or less clear things usually are. My personal theory is, again, things are not set in stone. The will of people can change things, especially human events. Even non-human events, or things that are set in what the Germanic traditions call weird, which is that which is set, that which will happen. Like, say, a volcano exploding, or a sudden sea level rise that's caused by earth changes of some sort, or solar powers. They can affect people, but people can choose how to react. And that's the Germanic concept of will. The idea that you may not be able to change fate, but you can choose how you meet it. So, do folks see the smoke in the volcano and leave? Or do they pretend like the citizens of Pompeii that that's probably an interesting light show, but nothing important enough to interrupt daily business with, until it's just too late to get out of town? Do they move, as people did when the sea level started to rise, taking out farms and lands in the Dark Ages? There's a reason historians call the Dark Ages the Migration Age, partly because of this sea level rise and sea level changes, and a lot of really bad weather, too, that wash lands away and force people to get up and move. Or did they just stay put, refuse to leave because of their investments or lack of willpower, and either drown along with their cities or just simply starve to death because it's too cold and wet now to grow any crops? I'm not saying that either of these exact situations is what we're facing, only that these feel like the sort of changes the puzzle card may be trying to sort out. So again, the kind of thing where you have the choice between will and weird, and part of that puzzle may be how individuals, as well as this union of whatever, decide to try to take them on. Now, my guess is that the union or fool's journey that comes out of the decision-making process will be something that appears to deal with whatever the impending crisis is, or a number of crises. It may even be called something like the new journey, the new way forward, or, remember, the New Deal. But because of either an overwhelming demonstration of the forces of nature, and or drowning in hidden information and stuff that comes out that was hidden before, the destruction of the new whatever is pretty much assured given this current pattern of what's going on now. This may or may not be a good thing, at least in the short term. Leaving need and destruction in their wake is not a really good way to end the reading. That's why I'm not going to let it sit where it is. I'm going to reshuffle these cards, I'm going to take out my deck, and pull one card and one rune for the start of 2014, just to see if our cat's eye can glimpse a bit further beyond this sort of obvious December climactic point. And what do we get? We get the card No, and we get the rune Lagouche again. Now, no, water. Could that be the water, hidden depths, unknown secrets stops? Or that things don't stop, they just continue on for the next few months or two of 2014? I think this is a classic case of the cards refusing to answer the question asked, which often happens more than people think, particularly when the cards feel that enough information has been revealed already. In other words, quit asking the same question, or because the reading is just going out too far on a limb, and there are too many other things that have to take place to be certain of the outcome. This could be as simple as a lot of the rain and bad weather stops, or even the focus switches from too much rainfall, too much water and snowfall, to a drought or a lack of usable water, which can sometimes, also become an issue even when you have too much water. But it's really hard to tell. So despite my best efforts to try to tie things up here, I'd say we're just going to have kind of a ragged ending. What we need to do is just keep reading and keep waiting as we approach the time, and closer to the end of 2013, we'll get a much better idea, I think, of what these readings mean. Meanwhile, we can call up all the great energies of birth and union for ourselves over the next couple of months, to have a great romantic summer, or winter if you're down under. Well, those particular two energies are in ascendancy, because again, for individuals, they're really fantastic. They don't have to mean anything particularly bad, other than that you just need to be careful when you have the birth of new relationships, because not all relationships are fantastic, but primarily that energy is what is in ascendancy right now. So let's go ahead and see if the weekly readings seem to confirm this pattern. I'll try to remember to put out the suggested single card for each month as I do the first show of that month, so we can sort of look to see if things are still going in that direction, or if they seem to be taking off another way. Because if the cards stop reflecting the overall weekly readings, then we know we may want to take another look here. The puzzle card can also mean that many things, including our personal lives, are also likely to take sudden and surprise turns around September, October anyway. So reading beyond that point is something kind of hazy and far-gazing at its best. And again, as individuals, we can be aware that there may be this September, October turning point and kind of be ready for it. It does not necessarily a bad thing again. Turning points simply mean a time when things change, and that means for some people things are probably going to greatly improve. We just don't know until we get there. As always, remember these readings are just a guide about what may be coming and not what is set in stone. And that what is important to you and your loved ones and how they affect you, not the entire political landscape, is what's important here to you. Current events readings are fun, they're interesting, they're entertaining, sometimes they're scary, sometimes they're uplifting, but really the personal ones are the ones that truly count. You want to be where your heart and the divine as you perceive it tells you to be, doing what you feel you need to be doing. And that's the best and first step on any life's journey, regardless of the pitfalls and the foolish pathways that may be walked down by others. That said, we'll be back in a moment with the second half of our show, where we look at a personal reading and examine it together. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages. All the music used on the show today is from musicalley.com, your source for free-to-air music for podcasts. The artists place their music up for free to air in hopes that you, the listener, will visit their site and purchase some of their outstanding musical offerings. So after the show, why not visit musicalley.com and explore their extensive playlist?
As she sings, she goes home in the evening with the dew all on her wings.
Have questions? The cards have answers. If you would like a personal reading with Melody, just go to my website, melodipsychicreadings.com. That's Melody with an I, psychicreadings.com, for information, or email me at melodyreader@gmail.com. Readings are available using Skype, phone, email, or even in person if you are lucky to live in Ireland. Why not find out what special messages the cards have just for you and book a private reading today?
And see me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland. See me from beneath the sea, the best in all of Ireland.
Welcome, everyone, back to the second half of Cat's Eye on the Future, the part of the show where we take a question sent in by you, the listeners, and kind of take it apart and look at it and do a show reading. Now, this week, I've decided to continue the slightly different format of the show by showcasing a slightly different type of reading. One that is also taking place over a longer period of time, just like at the beginning of the show. One not bound by just one summer, or even 6 months, but more like a progression of years. These types of personal readings are actually fairly common in private readings, especially when you get lovers who want to know about the long-term state of their partnership, or in the case of a parent, they want to know some long-term prospects for their child. I didn't use the question exactly as asked for reasons that will become explained shortly, but first, let's look at the overall question I got from a woman I'm going to call Mom. Mom writes, "Hi Melody, my youngest daughter just graduated from high school yesterday and will be off to college in September. That's great news, but she has decided to go to college on the other side of the continent. As you can imagine, her father and I are concerned for her well-being. Can you do a reading on the positives and negatives of her upcoming college experience so we can help her focus on the positives and minimize the impact of the negatives? I hope this isn't too broad a topic for your consideration. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Mom. I decided to break this question down into the two basic parts so we could get a sense of the two real issues that Mom wants to know about here. The positive aspects of the energies around her upcoming college experience and the negative aspects of her upcoming college experience. The rest of the reading that she's asking about is probably a bit more complex than we can handle in an on-air show reading. In a private reading, we would start with the same sort of layout as we are doing now, but then follow that up with a general reading about her daughter, herself, and then try to figure out how the cards and runes would recommend her parents help her out, so that she could have this positive experience as much as her parents actually can do this. Although the truth be told, the right kind of benign negative experiences in college can really set forth some great life lessons in the fact that actions are followed by consequences. Just as any student who ever attended a late night party the night before a final exam knows, and I'll plead the fifth on that one myself, but I can say that even though I'm a natural night owl, that lesson really made me learn a lot to be careful about going to bed early on nights when I had a mundane job in an office and actually had to get up to face the world. Now, let's look at the two options we've got here. The first question I used, I broke down like this. First, what are the positive aspects, energies, and issues that Mom's daughter is likely to experience during her college experience? Ideally, I would have restricted this to her first year of college, since the farther we go out, the fuzzier things tend to get. But since I'm already cutting the question in two and not answering it fully, I decided not to tweak with it anymore. We can just go with it as is and see what happens. Now, we get an absolutely wonderful card for the first card. Especially, I'm sure, in the eyes of your daughter, Mom, because the card is union, which is relationships. I think she is both likely to feel a wonderful sense of belonging when she gets to school. At that age, a great feeling of being accepted by the group is just so important. But I also think it's highly likely that shortly after she arrives on campus, she's likely to fall into that heady and deep emotional state of union with another person. Yes, it's likely your daughter is going to fall in love. And if it isn't her first deep love affair, it may be the first one she truly feels like she's experiencing on her own as an adult. I'm not sure how long this particular relationship will last because of the card that comes after it, but this relationship, or a more serious one later, are likely to mark an important life passage. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's just keep going. The Fool card comes next, in its most positive form here. It's very forward-looking, and again, this is exactly the place you want to see this card. An actual young person starting out on the new journey of their adult life, all full of excitement, ideas, a bit of fixation on their own internal universe, which is totally normal at this age. However, the Fool or New Beginnings card is also why I'm suspicious about that first early romance. If it does continue, it will likely recreate itself into something deeper than it was originally. Or it may simply drift away, as many first or early love affairs do. However, both experiences, the feeling of being and having a beloved, and that of belonging to a special group, are likely to be positive in the long run as they are appearing on this side of the reading. Now we're getting to the sort of stuff I thought we might see when I started this card reading. Energies or actual experiences that, while painful at the time, may have a positive outcome in the long term. Since there are two such cards right together, I'm going to list them and then go over them together, because I think they are a set, and I think they signal a time period possibly about midway through her time in college, or perhaps just a bit earlier, that's going to be a rather difficult for this young woman that's being read about here. Those cards are prison, or feeling trapped, and the Never card. something that either is never going to happen or feels like it will never happen. And the yes card follows them. The positive card turns up. Now, I think the prison and the never card suggest this time period when perhaps getting too caught up in that sense of belonging, her relationships, or possibly just feeling in over her head at school, your daughter feels trapped and like she will never be able to finish. That Fool card could even be seen to have indicating some confusion over what to study in the beginning, and that may reassert itself here when the really serious and hard work of working on a topic or a subject and learning about it really has to be seriously pursued. But the most likely outcome I'm seeing, both because of the yes card and the gift harvest runes, is that she most likely will pull herself together and graduate. You may be able to help her through this period simply by being supportive and letting her know you love her, whatever she decides to do. Whatever you do, don't make this fixation on failure into a serious problem or a make-or-break issue, because then it could become part of an internal rebellion or sort of a pushback to you. What you want her to fight is this kind of dark message that she's been giving herself, or that she feels like the world is giving her, that she just can't make it. And remember, that never card is also our friend the Raven, and the Raven is that dark messenger, and in this case, I really don't think he's being very helpful. So you just want to reassure her that you know she will do her best, and whatever that is, that's okay with you. I suspect that alone may be enough to start to begin to draw her out and get her back on track where she wishes to be, and I think one which may wind up a bit more complex than we expected. That's because, well, the harvest rune, Yera, is the last rune in this reading. Yes, it's a rune of harvest, indicating finishing something, but it's also a life cycle. It represents the wheel of time, planting and harvest, harvest and planting, winter, summer, summer, winter. Gabo, the first rune here, is usually translated as gift, perhaps the gift of a degree or career, but it is also the rune of partnerships and marriage. In fact, it's still the word for marriage in a variety of northern languages, or a variant of Gabo is. It's not always just the word Gabo, but it's a variant of that word. Now, my hunch here is that even if the first love affair does not turn out, it is highly likely that one thing your daughter is likely to come away from college with is that most important of life events, finding a life partner. Well, this isn't certain. It's highly likely and goes along with the rest of the positive energies of union, new experiences, gifts, and a certain amount of perspective she's going to be gaining along the way. This isn't going to be easy, but it looks like your daughter will be fine, as long as she makes it through that really rather bleak period that a lot of students have when that Raven is just basically giving them a load of horse products, shall we say, in terms of their abilities and the fact that they can actually do. So we ask, what are the negative aspects, energies, or issues that mom's daughter is likely to experience during her college experience? And lo and behold, we see what some of the issues are that are likely to cause this rather dark passage time in the first place. The first is the Inquirer card. Well, usually the person asking the question gets this card. In this case, it is the young woman herself, because we're asking about her. So we know again that the reading is flagging the question asked. It really is about the daughter, and that's important to know. This Inquirer card is followed directly by the Death card, which doesn't mean she's going to die physically. This card seldom means that in a personal reading, but it does mean she may feel part of her as an individual is dying, or is being put behind her. It's a final ending of childhood. Now, if that isn't a description of growing up, I don't know what is. And while it may be positive in the long run, it can be very painful in the short run. She may also realize that certain aspects of her former relationships and friendships are also dead, in the sense that they are not what they were before she left home, and they're simply never going to be again. That's again, just part of that growing up process. Dealing with this sense of loss, she's likely to try and reach out and replace her old friends with new ones. That's the friendship card. But it's going to learn the sad life lesson that some friends are false, hence we get the liar card, or may even use her and lie to her about their true agendas. I think this is part of the trap prison energy we found in the more positive reading, because while having friends turn out to be fake, false, or liars is never a good thing, learning to pull oneself out when life gets trapped like this, and getting through difficult situations, and getting over being hurt by people who are just mean, vicious, or even liars, is an important life skill to learn, and we all have to go through it. And here in this reading, we also see the prison card, but it's the cave card this time. In this case, that card is a card of withdrawal, depression, like the world's gone completely gray, there's no color in it, sadness, listlessness, etc. You get the idea. This is so profound and so strong, and pretty much in the same place in the reading as the prison never cards above were, that I'm sure they're all connected time-wise. Again, the K depression card is not good here because it invokes a sense of helplessness, but a turning around of prison in the sense of no prison and declaring that yes, I will go forward. As above, it's positive, but as long as we're wallowing in this kind of withdrawal, depression, refusing to confront the problem, it's a negative. Another thing that the reading wants to flag is the subjects of Fehu, which this rune usually translates as wealth, money, sexuality, or money and sex in this case, I think, which are likely to come up as negatives at some point in her experience. Most students do have issues at one time or another with both the handling of money, of sex, or at least their relationships. And again, the serious cave prison period could be the result of a combination of several factors coming together at once to cause problems with coursework, something like a busted relationship, a false friend, money problems, distractions, or again, combined with that difficulty of the subject matter, may all come together at the same time and again create that sense of I'm never going to be able to finish or I'm never going to be able to do this. Finally, there may be some hidden undercurrents or underlying issues to come out during this period or during college in a general way that may become causing some of the problems as well. Get those out and get them sorted, and things are much more likely to go smoothly in the future. So, this won't be easy. There are a number of negatives, including some painful things in the positive section that just are things that have to be sorted out. But overall, this is a positive outcome, and it seems pretty darn certain. Gabo, gift marriage, plus the harvest life cycle, or important life chapter, all suggest that your daughter is going to win out in the end. We're not quite sure how she does that, but we have some hints there in terms of her next life step, which is very likely to be partnership and perhaps even marriage. Again, as parents and a mom, I'm not sure how much you can do from across the country, but keep friendly emails and phone calls going, as much as your daughter will allow. But this entire reading pretty much looks like a young person turning into an adult, a process that will again, sometimes painful and uncomfortable, when successful, results in that harvesting of gifts that a graduation from one stage of life to the next should bring with it. Well, I think that's about all for this reading. Mom's going to have a lot to think about, it looks like, and if she likes, she may want to reopen this question, say a year or two from now, when we can see how things are looking at that point in time. Meanwhile, I think we've about reached the end of this special edition of Cat's Eye on the Future. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this slightly altered format as much as I have had in presenting it. All going well, I should be back next week with a regular update show and reading. Remember, if you would like your personal reading considered for a slot on the show, just write me at melodyreader@gmail.com. That's Melody with an I, reader one word, @gmail.com, and put show reading in the subject line. I can't promise to use all readings submitted for the show, but I can promise to read them and consider them. And I can't let this go without first mentioning that this show is part of the Time Monk Radio Network. Be sure to check out our website, timemonkradio.com, for the listings of all our other great shows and the huge number of interviews there that you can watch. But for now, that's about all for this week's episode of Cat's Eye on the Future. See you next time.
But here's a health to the company and one to my lass.
You have been listening to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we take a glimpse of the energies coming soon into your world and into your future. Be sure to join us again next time when we explore another chapter of Cat's Eye on the Future.
Again. But here's a health to the company and one to my last. Let's drink and be merry all out of one glass. Let's drink and be merry